people get into it and they just think about bigger pockets and fixing their entire life within a year and passive income. And 13 years is the grind.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think of, the get rich quick scheme. I'm going to get this real estate, I'm going to do nothing. And I think all of us here realize it's a little bit differently. I think there's an opportunity to do that. So what led you to real estate? What was the kind of the catalyst for that? How did you choose real estate in a land of all different options?
When I was 18, I went to junior college to play baseball, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to be, for the rest of my life. And I was really frustrated because the things I was interested in, I didn't know enough about. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with myself. So I went to a JUCO. I knew I wanted to play baseball. I knew I wanted to, chase girls in college. But I had friends of mine that were going to, 4-year schools, and they were like, oh, I'm going to major in, psychology, or I'm going to major in, business, or, something else, pre-med, whatever. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And so I was kind of soul searching and trying to figure out along the way. But one thing that really stands out when I think back to that time is I was always interested in business. I bought my first stock when I was 18. It was Gillette, because they came out with the Gillette. What was the razor they came out with? It was like
blade or something.
Yeah. It was like revolutionary. So I bought their stock because I love their product, and then I bought a little bit more when I get more money and whatever. It never amounted to much, but I was really interested in that. So I started reading like the Wall Street Journal stock section and all that when I was 18, 19. Nice. So I was always interested in companies and business, and I just never really knew what I wanted to do with that. So fast forward to a couple different majors later, and I was still interested in that, and I would read books on the side about it, but I didn't really know what facet of that I wanted to pursue. Eventually, in the year 2000, I got called on by a guy that was doing financial planning for Northwestern Mutual. And he got referred to me because I had a fairly decent social network. I was always kind of a connector of people. So you need a referral to somebody, I probably know who they are, and I can hook people up. So that was always kind of like my reputation, I guess. But he called on me because he got referred to me that I might
still your reputation.
Yeah. So he called on me thinking that I might be able to refer him to people. And the more we talked, he realized I was in recruiting at the time. So I interviewed people constantly. I knew a ton of people. And he said, let me ask you something. I remember this. He looked at me and he said, what would you be doing if you weren't in this job right now? And I thought about it, and I said, I would probably be doing what you're doing. Now, come to find out, it was more insurance sales related than actually like equities and stocks and things like that I was really interested in. So I was fascinated with the investing side of it, but not necessarily the insurance sales, right? Who wants to do that? So I ended up getting an interview, and I ended up diving into that. So I was a financial planner for about 1 year with Northwestern Mutual. During that time, I read probably every book they have in print about personal finance, financial planning, stocks, bonds, everything, right? So I had my Series 6, 63 insurance licenses and all that.
That's all. I had no idea.
Yeah.
It's so many people in the real estate sector are jumping in because they didn't like their job, or they read Rich Dad Poor Dad and they want to figure it out. Not a lot of people are like, I've read a million different ways on how to make money through investing, and I've landed on real estate as my favorite.
And actually getting that financial acumen. I know, you have some stocks. I think at the beginning I was trading stocks too, because I didn't know. And it was the closest thing I could touch to business outside of my W-2.
I remember I picked up a book, and I found Rich Dad Poor Dad at the time, and I loved that book. It was a whole mindset shift, and then Cash Flow Quadrant was even better, I thought, and more applicable to like how things work. Yeah. And I remember I read this book by a guy named Robert Allen. It was called Multiple Streams of Income. It was he was kind of like in the 90s. He wrote a whole bunch. He was like a finance guru and like business and real estate and all that. And so I read that book and I was like, wow, this makes a ton of sense. You want to supplement what you're currently doing with multiple income streams coming in so that you basically have a whole bunch of passive income and you're not relying on a W-2 job. And that spoke to me. So I was like, that makes a ton of sense. So I looked in the back of his book in the index, like what else he had written. And there was a book called Nothing Down. And that was all about creative real estate. So I was like, wonder what this is about. Read that book. And I've talked about this before, but he basically put out a challenge. And I think there was a reporter with the LA Times that ended up accepting his challenge, which was, you pick a city, tell me to go to it. I'll have nothing with me. And within 1 week, I will buy a property there with none of my own money. and he did it.
That's
so
awesome.
he did a proof of concept, and I was like, what?
That's right.
You can actually do that? So then I was like, well, let me find some more about this. And so I read a whole bunch of other books, and I was like, oh my God, this is the way. And I had always thought that you had to have just piles of money to be in real estate. And I was like, I didn't. I had poor spending habits. I was like a starving insurance salesman there for a year, right? Yeah. So I was starting kind of with nothing. And then when I ended up getting a pretty good job with ConAgra Foods at the time, and then eventually IBM and so forth, but I was able to do some things to get started in real estate on the side. So that's how it all started.